Hi, everybody. My name is Kim Martin. I am a Sidebar member, just like most of you or some of you here as well. And also anybody who's a friend of Sidebar. We are a invitation and member-led organization of leaders within the tech and several other industries. We live by the values of generosity, growth, accountability, and curiosity. And we are also here building a platform together in a community where we really want to make sure that we see everybody reach their full potential. Personally, I've been a Sidebar member now for about over almost a year and a half, and I have found an incredible value in the one-on-one networking opportunities that I'm being matched with, my peer circles. I've been a part of a few of them now, and the relationships that I'm building, the candid feedback and the support that I'm getting in order to get very clear on who I am professionally has been invaluable for my growth and transformation. And I really encourage, if you're curious and if you're in a position right now that you're asking yourself what's next, give me a call. Again, my name is Kim Martin. Happy to talk with you more about Sidebar. Today, though, I am really excited to host today's speaker session and facilitate a conversation with Ramona and Chris. We are talking here about what it actually takes to build a fast-moving and high-performance organization. Ramona is an executive coach who has led teams at eBay and Levi's, while also she's consulted for Twitter, SoFi, and several other high-performing large enterprises. She is known for partnering with organizations in order to develop confident, resilient, high impact leaders and teams that thrive through transformation. And in her near 20-year career, she has built deep expertise in consumer insights, marketing strategy, leadership, and also guiding research teams across 20 countries, shaping multi-million-dollar launches for global brands. But in 2018, Ramona decided to take her services independently, and she founded RH Coaching in order to bring all that expertise to developing executives and teams. She's been coaching senior leaders ever since then, navigating rapid growth at big tech companies such as Google, Meta, Anthropic, and also some e-commerce companies like Shopify and eBay. So her approach is grounded in inside out leadership, and she's also the creator of the Inside Out Leadership Accelerator, a cohort based program that builds leadership effectiveness. So thank you so much, Ramona. And Chris is also an additional speaker today. He's been a culture builder at Google and also Apple, in addition to eBay. He's been building software, or he's been helping companies attract, serve, and inspire new audiences, including software developers at Apple and early mobile buyers at eBay. For the past 10 years, he's focused on internal audiences and cultures that drive ambitious firms, from global powerhouses to high growth startups. He is grounded in the belief that culture is a performance strategy. He partners with ambitious companies to help them build, embed, and protect cultures that deliver results, where employees are inspired to give their best in the pursuit of shared goals. He spent most of his career in Silicon Valley, and he's very passionate about working with great teams to create things that no individual could have created alone. So he's very much about the collective good. Ramona, Chris, please feel free to add on to anything that I've left out and let us know, how do you want to get started? Go ahead and kick it off.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank you.
much, Kim. So good to be here. And I do want to say that Chris and I have been trying to boil the ocean, and we really try to keep these slides as nimble as possible. But just want to say that this is a huge topic. So when we talk about building trust in organizations, building trust in teams within ourselves, there's so much to say on these. And I want to also start by saying that Chris and I reconnected a few months ago, actually back in November, and we've been just having these awesome conversations that we said, hey, maybe we should put this together. And because what we found is that when we were talking about how do you actually build a high performing team, how do you build, I mean, for myself, now I'm a solopreneur, so it's how do I keep myself effective and really how do I keep growing? And what we found is this really interesting intersection in our conversations, because Chris was really passionate about talking about like, hey, this is what I saw really like when culture is done well, it really does show and you can really feel it. And the results are there clearly when we talk about, places like Apple and Google where he shaped culture. And we were talking about our experience, and I was sharing about like the work that I do from the inside out with leaders, where we look at our energy, not just our strategy. And, how do you create that self-trust? And then how does that actually reflect and really impact the people you work with? And then that in itself then ends up creating this bigger advantage that some teams and people have and organizations end up having, and some don't. And it's really apparent. And then, of course, we looked at data and we said, hey, you know what? We have something here. So we wanted to look at how do you actually build this trust advantage. Well, we came up with, thank you, Claude, with the many versions of that, but we ended up saying, you know what, this is an actual advantage that you can build intentionally, and there's a way to measure it and observe it. So I will share my screen so we can share what we found together. So the first thing that we wanted to share is that when it comes to the trust advantage, it's really built in three different layers. And I want to actually start with this quote by Steve Jobs. And the quote is, "It is always a team of people and the chemistry between that team of people that makes great results." And so I love this quote. And what I really think about when I see this quote is, how do you actually build that chemistry? I think this, we all resonate with this, and we recognize that that's true. But how do you build that chemistry? How do you actually do it? And what is your role in building that? Because that, and we know that that's really what leads to great results. So that's really where we want to dive in. So I want to start by sharing a story with a client, and this is a real story. And I want to just illustrate how trust, when it comes to building the trust advantage, this is something that really gets built in key moments. And why is it so important that we practice building we start by trusting ourselves, regulating our nervous system, because those moments sometimes are not, and often they're not easy to predict. And so, how do we build trust in those key moments where actually trust gets built rather than eroding it, maybe unintentionally? So I want to start with a story with a client of mine who came to coaching, and he is in a fast-growing AI company, and he's been there for 2 years, performing really well, constantly overperforming, and really feeling valued by his manager. And one day, he found out about this other team that's growing really fast. I mean, some of these companies are growing so fast, and you know what I mean. And so all of a sudden, new roles are created, new scopes are created, and he found that this other team had this focus that he felt like it was just like the absolute perfect fit. So great, so far so good. So the issue was that he kept postponing having this conversation with his manager. He's like, I should just talk to my manager. Maybe there's something that can be done. He found that there were no openings in that team, and he started to kind of postponed this conversation, feeling really bad, kept delivering. So nothing was obvious from just, probably for his manager, but he kept sort of building this pressure. And then eventually he started actually looking for another role. He's like, hey, why am I even trying and stressing out? Maybe there's another role somewhere else, like another company. So he brought this to coaching. And what we did, which is what we do in coaching sessions, is we looked at like, hey, what assumptions are you making? What are you really feeling? What's really going on underneath the hood, right? So I like to picture this sort of iceberg. We have the tip of the iceberg, which is what we really see, what people say, how people show up, the decisions that they make. But really, it all comes from this inner place. We call that the inner game. And so in his case, which is like the bottom of the iceberg, much bigger and often not unseen, right? We're the only ones knowing what's going on. So what we actually found as we dug deeper is that he was stuck in this sort of pattern of actual compliance was really the issue. So it's a fear pattern where he just wanted to kind of go along because it's safer to our nervous system to go along. So just I'm curious in chat, what do you think he did? Did he have a conversation or did he find another job somewhere else? So maybe just type one if you think he had the conversation, two if you think he left. Okay, see a lot of ones, some twos. Tempted to do both. Yes, Chris. Okay, so he did. He had the conversation. And he had that self-trust in himself, as we talked about, like, hey, what do you really want? And what's this gap about what you actually want and what you're actually doing, right? Like, I wish we were rational, but we don't really follow through on the things we know we should be doing. So what he found is that he found within himself this confidence to be honest with his manager and had the conversation. And so what happened was the manager in that moment, because it's kind of hard to give heads up, right? For, hey, I want to tell you that, I really am thinking about, you know, leaving this team. So the manager turned out in that moment that was really supportive in that moment, had a supportive response. Like if she was afraid, she was able to be intentional and show up in the way that she wanted to. And not only was she supportive, but she actually helped create a pathway. And what happens fast forward to 9 months later, this is the incredible thing, you guys. Not only was he did he move and there was a role there, he is currently leading this team. He was promoted. He is actually leading that team. That he was like, his imposter syndrome was so huge. He's like, who am I even to? I'm not exaggerating at all. Who am I to even be working with this team? I mean, these were just incredible, like PhDs and just like, unbelievable high caliber team. He is leading that team 9 months later. And this is the example that actually this whole workshop was created from, to, if I'm really honest. That's where I got the inspiration. And that's why, Chris and I were talking about, like, how do you create this trust? Because what it comes down to it is this person that I was working with decided to have this conversation. But we can only control so much, right? Like you also have to have a supportive manager. So that confidence, though, it wasn't just that he was confident prior to speaking up. He was confident. He was performing really well. This is more about this willingness to trust that I will be safe and I'm not going to just be quiet and have the conversation. So there was enough trust with his manager to be real, right? And so what happened was is that that team is kicking butt, is doing really well. In the end, the team won, the organization won, right? Not only kept this person, but actually he is in the right place. I just love this story. And what it comes down to is, this inner work. And I just wanted to bring this because I just saw this article as I was doing research for this workshop, and I came across this article from McKinsey, right? You wouldn't expect the company that is really just looking and obsessed with performance and strategy to come and tell companies right now when AI is shaping and changing and creating so much uncertainty and reshaping our headcount and the way we make decisions, the way we work, to come and say that that they are recommending that the companies right now is investing in building trust and servant leadership. And not only that, but they should give the same level of attention that they do to leadership development, to developing your leaders, as you do to developing your new IT systems and operating models. And not only that, but actually, that means providing time for leaders to do the inner work required to lead others effectively, right? So that is sharing insights with other people and really considering what success means, just not for themselves, but also for the bigger team. Now, again, we all know this to be cognitively, it makes sense, but really to have McKinsey come and call this out and make a business case that we need to take the time to do the inner work in a time when we have to move so fast and learn all this kind of how to operate differently, to me is really, really telling. So this is what we're talking about today. So we're going to share now the 3 layers where trust must be built. It's you. It really starts with you. And then it's building that within your team in a very intentional way. And then also within your organization. Because what Chris and I found is that it really cannot just be one or the other. It can't just be like you're showing up in this awesome way, in very intentional way. But meanwhile, the environment around you is completely different, right? We're human beings, we adapt, and unfortunately, we adapt to sort of negative patterns around us. And so also you can't just as an organization like set these goals or have those values on the wall. This is how we show up while you actually are not following through and you're not being really specific and you don't have systems in place to reinforce that this is how individually we must show up to get the things done that we want to show up and feel good while we're doing it without burning out. And then this is how you as an organization, right? You have to kind of set that up. So setting ourselves up for success in our teams. So it comes down that we have to do all three. We're going to also share the 15 behaviors that directly are correlated with trust and team performance. These are learnable, observable, and measurable. So these are things that we all can learn. So we want to make this super concrete, you guys, and then you're going to leave with a concrete thing that you can do differently immediately this week. And we have very specific tips for you. So please stay till the end. And we're also going to leave a handout. So you don't have, take notes if you would like, but you're going to leave with a handout today with everything we're sharing here. So we're just going to be here together and just take these in and please, um, actually save your questions till the end or not, just put them in chat because we're going to have time to not just share, but actually talk and really pick your wisdom. We want to learn from you also. So I want to start by sharing this first layer, right? So we're talking about, it really does start with you. No pressure. But this is the thing that you can control, right? So it really starts with understanding that at any given time, all of us are operating in one of or two ways. We are either showing up in a reactive way, we're modeling reactive leadership, or we are modeling intentional leadership. Now, the key thing is, and if you're familiar with Brené Brown's work, she talks a lot about like, it's not about the lack of fear to have courage and to be intentional. Fear shows up in both modes. It really is about knowing on ourselves, knowing our patterns, knowing that this is exactly how I'm going to tend to show up. These are my triggers, and preparing ourselves to be intentional. And that looks like setting an intention before your meeting. And I'll share very specific things, but really comes down to setting an intention. This is how I want to show up, being able to regulate my nervous system because fear will always be there, and being able to really practice this and constantly shifting when I see that I'm in reactive mode. So let's look at what do these actually look like. So reactive leadership is really something that is essentially something that it's our default, right? So a lot of data shows that, and I'm quoting here directly where this framework comes from. This comes from research done over 750,000 leaders globally. It's done and it shows in the leadership circle profile. And this is a framework that you can use for yourself, for your team. If you're interested to learn more, I can share a book or you can talk to me about doing this for yourself. But essentially that data shows that intentional competencies that I'll share exactly what those are, correlate with leadership effectiveness at 0.61. And that about 80% of leaders are predominantly reactive. What about those 20%? Well, the 20% are those of us who are practicing intentionally shifting from the reactive into intentional. May I show up the way I want, right? So practicing how we show up, but knowing that all of us, our default is this emotionally triggered defensive. When something happens, when we are having a high stakes conversation, we're having a high stakes presentation with a client, with the board, with the C-level leaders, we are going to be, if someone pokes a hole in that presentation, our default will be to be defensive. Well, let me tell you why this happened, etc. Right? So we're emotionally triggered as we would because our nervous system is registering that as a threat. But can you instead practice being composed? What does composed under stress look like? How can you slow yourself down? So another way that reactive leadership looks like is that we're critical of other people. Or maybe we're not speaking up. We're not taking responsibility, right? We shut down. There's that kind of fight or flight or freeze mode that we go in. Whereas the intentional leadership is really making a point of showing up with intention in a way that's authentic, that reflects who we really are, rather than changing for other people, constantly performing and being what we believe other people want us to be. Speak, so this is not about not being flexible. In fact, it is about being flexible to our audience's needs, but actually stay in a way that's coherent for us, that's authentic. So I'm absolutely certain that all of us want to be in the right box. We want to be intentional, right? That's aspirational. And I'm also really pretty sure that most of us are not there, just because I see the data and sample of one, I see it with myself, that I constantly have to catch myself when I go in defensive mode, and helping my clients do the same thing. So the question that I have for you is, which of these reactive, let's start with that. Uh, which of these reactive leadership modes or aspects do you recognize when you are in a challenging situation? Maybe when someone pushes back, maybe when you're about to go into a business development conversation, maybe you're about to present an important deck. Jean says, Jean, you have both one and third. Yeah. So emotionally triggered, defensive, micromanaging. Absolutely. Like, what happens? I don't trust. Here's the thing with micromanaging is I don't even trust myself. The core is fear that if I delegate and something goes wrong, I won't be able to take it. So I see micromanaging, over accommodating, right? So that's the other way that we go. We're like, oh yes, absolutely. Do you want us to do 20 more slides on this? Absolutely, we'll do it. By tomorrow, no problem. So we go, that's another survival strategy that we've developed when we feel afraid, when we're reactive mode. So all of them, Rishi, Julie, all of them, yeah, absolutely, depending on the situation, and Julie, defensive more than others. So awesome. So you know yourself, right? So that's really key. Knowing which one of these will show up next time I'm someone pushes back against what I have to say. Which one of these do I need to be prepared for? So, it starts with that self-awareness and honestly lowering our ego and just say, yeah, I'm not perfect. So let me just expect that I will probably be reactive. I'll probably take over. I'll probably be quiet most of the time until I have the perfect idea, because perfectionism is something that we have been conditioned to be, right? Like, but the problem with perfectionism is if I wait until I have the perfect idea, what happens is I constantly reinforce this habit of it's not safe to share something in the moment. And so, why is this important? We know from research, right, that when we are sort of in this space that we don't trust ourselves, then we don't trust other people, because it's really two sides of the same coin, right? If I trust myself, I'm more likely to trust other people. I create what we call psychological safety. It's a safe space. When people say, hey, you know what, this is a safe space, I can talk to my team about this. Or, and I heard this just yesterday from a client who's like, you know what? And this new team, she's in month 3 in this new role. She's like, I just don't feel like I have that yet. And that's pretty bad. If you, by month 3, you don't feel like you have a safe space to really speak up and share ideas before they're perfect, innovation is going to, let's just start with that because we talk about business performance. Innovation is going to slow down, right? So if you have a team of 10 people and everyone is sort of holding back, right? Then imagine how many amazing ideas are being held back. And I have been in teams, and I know, Chris, you have too, where, and I'm sure all of you, I hope all of you have been in teams that are actually showing what intentional leadership looks like. It's so exciting when you're able to say, you know what? I feel safe in this team. Guys, I haven't thought this through, but I have this idea. And you're not so personally attached to that idea that if you're wrong, if wrong, which there's no such thing as wrong, as like we brainstorm, that's how we build great things. But if you feel like you might say something stupid, again, what is stupid? It's an early idea, it's stupid. You know that you're not going to be punished. Now, we're all humans, we judge other people, yes, we are. But if we come with an intention and we reinforce this every day, and you have a team manager who's reinforcing that it's okay, I've seen CEOs, I've seen, C-level people who are like, I don't really know yet what to think about this. I'm not really sure. I don't have an opinion on this, or I kind of have an idea. It makes it safe for other people to share, right? So the question here is again, which reactive, oh, okay, that's a typo right there. But I feel safe in this room. I do actually. This was going to be, I was going to show a detail, but the question here again is which pattern do you default to? And especially when it's high stakes. Again, I know I asked that question, but I just want you to reflect. You don't have to type into chat, but just think about maybe an upcoming meeting that's really important for you, a high stakes conversation. Okay, so let's take like 5 seconds. Imagine now, which one will you tend to show up from? Starts intentional but can end up in reaction. Totally. It's not like a perfect linear, like I'm here or I'm here. We basically are going in waves throughout the day. There's a lot of data that shows that this is literally how our energy goes. We are, reactive or calm, reactive and calm, like the waves. So just something to reflect on. And I want you to think about this question before you go into that meeting. What is my intention? Where am I most likely going to be reactive? What is going to trigger me? So I want to share with you the what does intentional leadership actually look like? And again, this is based on research from the Leadership Circle profile. There's a lot of data. Like this is so incredibly researched. And as a researcher, I wanted to look at the most solid model, and I adapted it. And what I found is that there are 5 competencies. So it shows up as care and collaboration, authenticity and integrity, staying composed under stress, having a strategic focus rather than being all over the place, and being able to be accountable and achieve your goals. Notice that to the right side is more of the human aspect that we so often forget about. We're so focused on goal achievement. And there's a lot of research that really shows that the areas to the left, they tend to be the things that are top of mind for us and things that we practice more. And the ones to the right are things that we forget about. So I always say, before an important meeting, you have your slides ready. Remember the humans in the room. Remember the human connection. Show that you genuinely care. Actually, genuinely care, not just show. We're not performing, right? Like genuinely care because people will feel it. And then, can you stay composed under stress? What are your strategies? So reach out to me if you are interested in how to stay composed under stress. Or I'll share the things that I've seen work. Chris and Kim and I, we were just doing some breathing right before this so we can be composed under stress because it's stressful to share things with people. So now what are
Hey,
the
Ramona,
yes,
one
please.
one quick Rishi had a really interesting question in chat.
Yeah.
If you recently had a meeting with your manager where intentional moved to reactive, should you
Mhm.
drop a note to acknowledge it and show you're working on it?
You had a meeting. You and Rishi, I'm guessing you moved from intentional to reactive?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Which exactly where our skills get tested, right? Something happens, you're like, oh no. Um, I think we should expect that, by the way. I really want to validate and normalize that this is actually a typical pattern. We are just not going to be intentional all the time, every minute of the day. Again, expect fluctuations because you're a human being. And so the question is, what do I do with that? Should I drop a note to acknowledge and show that I'm working on it? I love that you're bringing this because that would show up which of these 5 competencies if you did that.
I mean,
You're,
at least authenticity.
yeah, right? You would do that. Now, again, it's up to you if you feel like remember the example of my client, do you feel like you have that trust with your manager? I think that's at least one of the questions because we always want to consider how do I want to show up and do I actually legit have safe, do I have that relationship with my boss? I would leave this up to you. This is my coaching approach. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to ask you questions to clarify what you believe is the right thing to do. But I would say if you feel that this is possible, I would encourage you to see what it would look like,
Mm-hmm.
because that's not a one and done. It's not like your nervous system might say, oh my gosh, what is my boss going to think about me? And this is actually your willingness to trust yourself and trust the boss to be
I
authentic.
think the biggest question was, given the world we live in, can this
Mhm.
backfire?
Yeah, that's a legit question. Can this backfire? Right? We're always minimizing risk. But what I will say is that the behaviors that do build trust with the other person do involve us being authentic and actually having a plan. Like, hey, I'm working on this. Right? So there's no right or wrong answer. I think these are know how to apply this, use your judgment, but knowing that these are the behaviors that will build trust.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. That's a kind of question that I think we're all facing. And can I have the courage, first of all, not just to do the thing, but actually to go inside and get to know myself? Like, what is actually triggering here? What am I imagining? Right? Because fear, this is how you know decisions made based on fear is, am I making a decision to protect myself because I'm imagining, I'm catastrophizing? What's the worst thing that can happen? I'm going to get fired. I'm going to be homeless. I mean, this is what high performers who have incredible jobs are telling me. This is what we're all afraid of. So, can I mitigate that fear? Is that the place that I want to lead from, or do I want to lead from a place of purpose, authenticity, integrity? And can I trust myself and can I trust the person I'm with that it's okay? That I'm is it a safe space, in other words? So these are a lot of behaviors here, and all again, we're not going to go through all of these right now. Know that these are behaviors for each of the 5 competencies that you can learn, that you can be intentional about, that you can observe, that you can measure with your team. And we're going to leave you with these, but just know. And so what I want to say, for example, with my client, who, when we worked on that, we found that he was in a pleasing pattern, was that he was chose, like you said, Rishi, to be authentic. He chose to do that. He felt that he could do that. And the manager didn't show up in a controlling way. She was composed, right? And she was strategic. She really was able to I mean, I think it seems like steady and intentional is how she showed up. So more to say on this. I also want to say that the trust advantage is real and there's a lot of data backing this up. And one last thing before I hand it over to you, Chris, is that, again, remember that there are key moments that tend to trigger reactive leadership at a team level. So what are those moments? It's when we are giving and receiving feedback. And so the question there is, can you give effective feedback without softening it? Because there is and there is, believe it or not, an assumption there that you don't trust the other person that they can take it. Right? So I'm judging the other person if I soften it. Can I trust that this person has what it takes and wants to grow? So can you give effective feedback without softening it? And can you receive it without shouting down? I mean, everyone hates feedback. Let's be honest. But can I practice enough to understand that this is a gift, and then it's a data point, and I can choose to do what I want with it. But the more I know about my blind spots and how I show up, it's going to help me be more effective, right? So working with our fear, working with our sort of tendencies, reactive patterns, and then be intentional. And then cross-team disagreement. I mean, how many times it happens that we have different goals, different timelines, right? Can you stay intentional and collaborative? Focus on the bigger goal instead of just kind of getting reactive, defensive, controlling. And then when it comes to uncertainty and change, which is happening right now a lot, in the way that we make decisions, who we hire, how we hire. Can you acknowledge fear, doubt, and uncertainty? I know teams in the AI space that are actually managers are asking this exact question. Let's talk about this team. Tell me about what is they call it I heard FUDs. I don't know if you guys heard about this. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I just was like amazed. So what does this look like if you want to do this with your team? It's essentially about embedding and tracking these 15 behaviors. I'm sharing here an example of a team that I did this recently with, and it's essentially asking your team, and this is something that the team is assessing the team. So every member of the team is assessing the team, and then we discuss, hey, what is our lowest and what is our highest score, and what do we want to do about it? And so, again, I want to pass it on to Chris to talk about the organization, because we have to build trust at all three levels, because we are not swimming alone here, right? We are part of a system, and how can we create a system to thrive? So I'll pass it on to you, Chris.
Hey, thanks so much. Look, as Ramona talked about, great teams enabled by trust, right? And that starts with us individually and then gets into how we begin to show up for one another. And she shared how there are some really specific behaviors actually that we can dive into and continue to build trust for ourselves and for our organization. But each team can be an island. So the question really is, in that case, is the water they're in keeping them apart, or is it bringing them together? So, Ramona, could you go ahead to the next slide, please? When engineering, doesn't trust product, or sales doesn't trust marketing, that's just us being kept apart, right? It's not it's not just a relationship problem, it's a decision-making problem, and it's a performance problem, and over the long term, it's an attrition problem. And in this case, you don't scale trust, you scale distrust. And employees don't just distrust each other, they actually start to distrust the entire organization. Purifying that water requires that we build an org that shows up the way Ramona was talking about, right? And that's pretty simple. It's about having the organization actually show up the way we would want to show up and the way we'd want to show up as managers, which is intentionally. And it's straightforward, right? You stand for something, you do that consistently, and you do it in a way that inspires action from others. To do that, it really comes down to just clarifying expectations across your organization. What are the expectations that we all share? What are our shared assumptions about the way we'll behave with one another? To help that scale and to enable consistency, you embed it in your processes. And then importantly, you tell the stories that keep these expectations alive and in action day to day. This is purifying the water. This is creating that connection between the islands. And importantly, these are interdependent. The great news about interdependency is when they all work, if you're succeeding at all of them, they reinforce one another pretty easily. The challenge is if you're failing at one of them, it can pull the rest down. But let's just start by looking at the first one, clarifying expectations. Right? Clarifying expectations, this is grounded in your values and principles. And it's very pragmatic. Go ahead, Ramona, please. It really is about helping the organization clearly understand what are your values, what are the behaviors that flow from them. This can get tangled up in what are the beautiful values that we want to write on the wall, what are the aspirations we want to state. That's wonderful, but the pragmatism of this is what do we really intend to make true in the way we work together, right? And the difference between what we desire to be true and what we intend to make true is pretty obvious if you ask, to me anyway, when I say, I intend to be in great shape, or I desire to be in great shape, but I don't intend to go to the gym. That's where that distinction happens. So what are your values and behaviors, and the behaviors that flow from them? You don't have to be soft. What I mean there is honestly, like you could be pretty aggressive in the culture you build, as long as the understanding of what that means is shared, and as long as it's about outcomes for the organization, not just for the individuals. And I want you to think about the words and their meanings. Getting clear about this can be really tricky. Collaboration is a great example. It can create a ton of dissent. If one team thinks that collaboration means they're asking for input, and the team they're working with thinks collaboration means that they get a veto. So I'm sure we've all seen this and many other examples. In an age of AI, data-driven is a huge one, right? A lot of companies are now saying they're data-driven. Even individual teams within organizations are talking about how data-driven they are. And yet it's not clear. Do they mean that you wait until the data tells you what the right decision is? Or does it mean that you build structured tests and then use the data to evaluate that performance? Either one can work, but they can be very different. You can have a very different experience, and you can really damage trust if teams aren't operating with a shared exception. So this gets us into trade-offs. How are you going to balance all of these, right? Obviously, collaboration versus action. We want everybody to be aligned, and yet we also want to move fast. We want to be driven by data, but we want to take smart risks. This is about understanding what those could be, what those trade-offs are, and then being consistent about how they're made. And the biggest challenge to consistency that companies see is that there's a cost to every trade-off you have to make on these expectations. There is a long-term benefit. The long-term benefit is higher performance in a trusting culture. The cost is almost always a short-term cost. And the best example is, would you punish a strong performer for violating this particular expectation? If the answer is yes, it's imperative that you go back and change the order of those expectations and get clear about them for your organization. And what's really important is that this is ongoing, right? You have to keep this alive because you can't imagine just what every trade-off might be. It's an ongoing exercise, and that's why you have to build it into your processes so it stays alive. So we just talked about trade-offs, right? Where do they show up? They show up in decision-making. And most companies treat decision-making in a very ad hoc way. And I'm suggesting that a clear process around this makes a huge difference. Anybody who's been a great project or program manager understands how to make this work. But employees have to believe that those expectations matter consistently. Being a great project manager, what do you learn to do? You define these things in advance. You know who's got responsibility. The common leader question is a really interesting one. A lot of companies, especially high growth companies, are building complex projects and complex products that require interaction from a lot of different teams. The first common leader you have then in the org chart who could maybe sort out a real dispute that you're struggling to answer is often the CEO. And the CEO clearly can't decide everything. So I'm going to suggest that one of the most important things we can do as an organization is learn to put directors and VPs more on the hook for solving problems in line with our expectations. I think it's a new norm that I'm beating the drum for. I think people assume it happens, but it needs to be much more explicit. And we can build this into quarterly business reviews, right? How to keep it alive. What got decided, and most importantly, how did we get there? This leads into our personal evaluation, right? On the one hand, decision-making happens frequently, right? And we can kill trust in decision-making. It can die to 1,000 cuts if we're not careful. With evaluation, that happens much less frequency, but it can do large chunks of damage at once. Here, it's important that we assess both what gets delivered and how, right? Most companies want to focus on performance-driven cultures will tell you it's all about outcome. But if you don't focus on how delivery happens, you're basically stepping away from a shared set of expectations, and you're giving yourself an opportunity to erode trust. So how did that actually get, how did that look at a place like Google, for instance, is we actually weighed what and how the same in performance evaluations. We actually standardized our expectations, and we did that before every evaluation cycle. It's not rocket science to do, but it is something that can be easily skipped. The way we used to approach it was we'd bring all the leaders who would write ratings, we'd bring them together about 2 weeks before we even got self-evaluations from our team members. And we would talk not about our team members, but we would reread the written standards for performance at every salary band. And then we talk about what that means to us now. What do we think performance consistency means? When behaviors of a specific sort might push someone up a level or down a level in ranking. And it was only after that that we go and actually perform evaluations of our people. And if you're gonna focus on, we'll go back one because I want to talk about hiring. If you're focused on decision making and evaluation, these are things that that affect the people who work here. What we want to make sure we're doing in hiring is we want to make sure that we're actually bringing in people who won't pollute the water. Right now, we need the people who work here to believe that the pipeline we bring in is going to be supportive of what we're trying to do and aligned with our expectations. And what you'll see here just quickly, the interview process is screening both for what you can do and how you can do it, right? You'll see this pattern across everywhere we embed in processes, what and how. In interviews, what interviews, in most cases, we ask just, hey, can the person perform the job? At Google, we call that role-related knowledge. But it turns out that was one of 4 things we'd evaluate for in the interview process. The other 75% was about how that would be delivered, not just what. A final note here, just onboard your team well. Onboarding is the time when new hires now get to come in and learn what this water is actually like for themselves, feel the temperature, feels what it is. It's a time for indoctrination. That's how most teams use it. It's also a time for inoculation. Every organization has quirks. This is the opportunity now to tell the stories, to share the moments that help people understand that the things that might seem like quirks are actually okay, to know that they can trust where they are based on the way things go down in that unique organization. So let's talk about telling the stories real fast. I know we're tight on time. Telling the stories comes down to a couple basic things. One, you want to shape what the stories are. Focus on decision and actions that are about your shared expectations, right? You want to bias those stories that you tell toward things that are already happening. This isn't about a whole new exercise in fiction. This is about helping people, the fish who are swimming in the water, see that the water is clean, right? The cleaner the water is, sometimes the harder it is to see. So you need to help people understand that. You need to choose that carefully. And again, confront your quirks. Be direct about it, right? This organization, every organization has something unusual. Find the stories that show those quirks coming to life in ways that deliver on your organization. And when you share them, a big note here is translating your external stories into internal lore. I will suggest that each one of you after this, go back, look up, you can find it on Wikipedia, you can probably find some videos about it. Go look up the Think Different manifesto from Apple in the late 90s. The Think Different manifesto and the original Think Different TV commercial were purely external exercises that told an internal audience exactly what our standards were, who inspired us, and how we were going to work. And you can echo this relentlessly. Marketing people, comms people, and executives get bored of telling the same story over and over and over. The Think Different campaign lasted for 10 years. You've all seen the Energizer Bunny ads. 38 years old. I looked it up, right? Like, echo relentlessly. And inspiration is really about clarity in one way. How do you make it easy for somebody to remember what you're and have the point land? But importantly, it's about letting people see what's unique about your expectations in your organization. That's what people want to carry forward when they talk to each other in the hallway, or when they talk to families or friends or potential candidates or potential customers. Show them the connection between their behavior and their results. And more than anything, help them see themselves reflected, because they're the heroes in an environment of trust, in a space where the organization trusts them to lead authentically and intentionally. They, in fact, are the heroes. So to wrap up, Ramona.
Thank you. So in closing, one thing that you can do differently this week. So again, remembering that trust advantage gets built at 3 different levels. And we just wanted to kind of, again, remind you how you can do this. Again, it starts with you. So in a meeting that triggers reactive patterns, see if you can show up with intention. It's all about the practice. For your team, see if you can assess your team, which of the 15 behaviors you'll improve, and make a plan to shift those as a team. And I'm going to drop those in just a second in chat. And then for your organizations, before your next evaluation or hiring, document expectations of desired behaviors, not just talk about it. We need to document those so we can reinforce those. So that's how you build it. Okay. So if you would like to go deeper with us, you can download the workbook, and I will share the link in chat right now so you can see again all of those behaviors, the 15 behaviors, and everything that Chris just shared. You can book a 30-minute diagnostic with us if you'd like to just kind of see which level would you like to go deeper on. And I just want to open it. I know we don't have a lot of time, but we would love to just answer any questions that are coming up right now for you. And I can look at chat.
And Ramona, as you're doing that, everybody, again, my name is Kim. I represent Sidebar. As you're bringing up any questions and Ramona and Chris are answering them, I'm going to share a Sidebar survey. Again, one of our values here is growth and curiosity, and we are curious about what you all believe or what you all think about today's session. And we would appreciate any of your feedback and helping us to continue to grow and improve these sessions as well. I'm dropping the link of the survey in chat, and I will also be sharing the QR code and the link as well.
Thank you, Kim. And I will also just say that I'm a Sidebar member, and I just get so much value out of being having my own personal board of directors built in. It's really a great place, highly recommended, absolutely enjoy it. I want to open the floor for any questions at all, or drop them in chat. Thank you, Jean. And I did see a comment, but again, just unmute yourself and come on screen if you'd like to ask a question. But I did see a comment in chat, and it was about and Atul said, I think most of us understand these behaviors, or I think this was about the behaviors. It's about building awareness and capacity towards it. And that's exactly right. It is about building. This is a leadership capacity, right? There are competencies that we can learn and we get better at to really create a safe space for other people. And we can't create a safe space for others if we don't feel it ourselves. And that is the practice ultimately, is being aware of our own patterns, and then, keep practicing until the intentional becomes the automatic.
I have a quick question for the entire chat, for the group, if you don't mind. The question is, we talked about 3 particular things, right? The helping build trust through the way you show up individually, helping build trust through the way you show up with your team, and then helping build trust through the way your organization is actually structured and comes to life. And of those 3, what are the areas that you think would companies you've seen, organizations you've worked with, what of those 3 do you think they need to work on the most? Or is it a mix of all of them? Where do you see the opportunity lying? Feel free to type in 1, 2, 3, or all of the above, whatever, if that's easier. If anybody has any thoughts on that. And if no thoughts, then I'm going to assume it's everywhere. Oh, that's super interesting.
Help employees build self-trust.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And how do you scale that?
Especially in, I think, helping employees build self-trust in a time of uncertainty with, AI changes, or at least AI being talked about as a change. I'm talking to a lot of organizations who have been telling me that um, specialists are less, or they're seeking specialists less, and they're now looking for generalists more who can use tools in a different way, which is a change to the behavior of organizations and a change to the way a lot of us have planned our careers. I'll be interested to see how that lasts. But as an employee in a time of change with shifting sands beneath your feet, um, I couldn't agree more.
Yay for those generalists.
Oh, yeah. Chris, good call out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Julie, yeah, that's interesting. So a lot about life stage, company life stage, where they're in a scaling growth or sort of a contraction mode.
Yeah.
It's an interesting time to be in business. It's an interesting time to be enabling people, and it's a really interesting time to be trying to build something.
Thank you, everyone. Hi, Nicole.
I enjoyed the talk very much, Ramona, Chris. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your insights. When you asked who would like to go deeper, it also occurred to me that, with the shifting times and, emerging technology, et cetera, there may be different personas of people who are interested in going deeper with you. I'm just curious who you're finding seems to resonate with the work you do, with the questions you're asking, with the conversations that you're in. Just would love to learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that it's for me, it's leaders of who have teams that are growing and teams are growing fast because the organization is growing really fast. It's usually a lot of the fast growing startups right now. I would say mid-size are the ones that I tend to partner with the most. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, similarly, I tend to work with a lot of, mid-level managers up to senior executives and founders who are trying to understand how do we scale something in a fundamentally different way. And sometimes I've partnered with folks who are advising founders, folks who are advising people who are, I work with people who are uh, like fractional executives who are also trying to just add a different perspective to how they come in and make an impact, because a lot of fractional executives I find are excellent at their function, but they can get viewed as only being in that function when they're inside the organization they're working with, and helping them find ways to break out of that so they can have a more scalable impact across the organization is something I just chat through with people.
Thank you for fielding that. I got someone else chiming in the back in here. I'm gonna go on mute. Thanks.
Oh, what a cutie. Cheers. Thank you for joining us.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Ramona and Chris, and everybody for joining us today for today's session. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and week. Thank you.
Thank you so much.